And let's kick off this event by discussing cryptocurrency and blockchain. Our first guest is the Vice President, General Counsel, Enterprise at Coinbase, a digital currency exchange headquartered in San Francisco. Juan Suarez manages general enterprise legal matters at Coinbase, including litigation, corporate affairs and governance, employment, regulatory affairs, securities regulatory, data privacy, and security. So Juan, I think that cybersecurity aligns with you like right there. Prior to Coinbase, he was a litigation attorney at 2 national law firms, and leading the conversation with Juan is Walter Mix, or Walt Mix, who is the managing director and financial service practice group leader at Berkeley Research Group. So please join me in welcoming Juan and Walt to the stage.
Well, good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear us? Yeah. Good to go? Well, we were speculating as to what our walk-up song was going to be. It is baseball season, and I think everyone knows that as the players come up to bat, they all have their individual walk-up songs. So hopefully that music presages an excellent discussion here this morning. How's everybody doing? Everybody survived the traffic? I'm from LA, and I go back and forth several times a month, and I have to say that the traffic up here is approaching that of Los Angeles, unfortunately. I'd like to say a special thank you to Patty for inviting us. This should be an excellent discussion this morning, and it's great to see some old friends out in the audience like Bob Taylor with Grata and Shirish Netke, who does a lot of AI work. It's great to see you guys here with us. My background, just very briefly, I was the commissioner of the State Department that is now the DBO. So we regulated just about everything financial that moved in California. Before that, I was a real banker and an investment banker. And we're really fortunate that Juan was able to Uber out to be with us this morning from San Francisco. He's going to talk briefly about the startup experience and the evolution that his company has gone through. And just as an aside, there's a gentleman named Zuckerberg, I understand, appearing on Capitol Hill this morning. But we've got Coinbase and we've got iValley. And quite candidly, I'd much rather be here because I think you're going to learn a lot more. So let's just start out with a few fundamental questions as we go through a series of issues. Juan, maybe you could just enlighten us with what exactly is Coinbase and what is the core business of Coinbase?
Sure. Thanks, Walt. I want to thank the team for hosting today. I have to say that's the first time that I've had walk-on music that features the sound of a cash register. There is no cash register at Coinbase. I love the choice of song, but all of our money is through the internet at this company. But I guess by way of brief background, Coinbase is the world's leading virtual currency exchange. We are the easiest place for people to purchase and sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, and several dozen other digital currencies. We have a couple of different products. The one you all have probably or may have encountered if you've had even a fleeting experience with cryptocurrency is our consumer product, Coinbase.com. And on that product, we've got something like 30 million clients globally. And then we also have a more sophisticated institutional trading product that's called Coinbase Pro. And if you visit Coinbase Pro, you'll see an experience that is more like your Charles Schwab high-end trading experience. And that's really oriented towards people who are either day traders or institutional platforms that are kind of focused on the speculation side of virtual currency. In addition to that, we have a number of other institutionally oriented products for hedge funds, wealth management firms, and others who are increasingly deploying assets into the crypto space. And Coinbase is involved in all of those different verticals. We got started about 5 years ago. as a small company. Today we're much larger. It's been an enormously fun journey.
So why is cryptocurrency exciting?
So I think everybody has their own different answer to that question. Cryptocurrency it's a new technology. It's got myriad applications, and so you talk to 10 different technologists and they'll probably give you 10 answers to that question. I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to give you what might be sort of the dumbest answer, but it's the one that works for me. The sort of my story about crypto is the Bitcoin white paper was published by an anonymous Satoshi Nakamoto, right? Not an identified individual in around 2008. A couple years later, I was sitting at my desk, working on some briefs for countrywide mortgage-backed securities litigation. Not the most fun part of my career, and this white paper just popped up on a blog. And I think the thing for me that was most compelling about Bitcoin, and back then Bitcoin was the only cryptocurrency in the space, was the fact that it revolutionized a concept that I had never spent any time thinking about, which is the concept of intermediaries in payments. So when I go to Starbucks and I buy a coffee, there's basically one of two things I'm going to do. I'm going to either hand cash over the counter, and the tangible qualities of those cash is what allows Starbucks to say, yes, you've given me value, I'm going to give you coffee. Or I'm going to swipe a card. And the card swipe works pretty well, and like most other Americans, I never thought about it. But the thing about Bitcoin that kind of opened up a series of questions in my mind about the card swipe is that there's an enormous amount of intermediation going on in the card transaction that doesn't exist in the cash transaction. And the reason for that is that you can't disintermediate, you can't trust a stranger with electronic transfers. And the reason for that is you don't have the equivalent of cash. You don't have a thing you can hand to a person where they know that they've received real value from you. You can't do that electronically. And the reason you can't do that electronically is I can put anything I want into an electric file. It's unclear whether that's bona fide. It's unclear whether that's a scarce resource. It's unclear whether I spent it twice. And what blockchain technology, beginning with Bitcoin, did for the first time in the history of humanity was to introduce a cash-like concept for electronic transactions. And that to me just blew my mind. That blew my mind, because if you think about how impactful the internet has been on the world, and all the internet brought was as a decentralized protocol, a way for people to communicate with one another without involving the newspaper or other forms of intermediaries, and then all sorts of permissionless innovation exploded out of that technology. Bitcoin and blockchain has now introduced that same concept for financial services and any number of other services. And that to me was an eye catcher. That got me hooked very early on, and that got me excited. And so I started purchasing some Bitcoin back in about 2012. The price was significantly cheaper. Now, not enough that I'm retired, unfortunately, but enough that it hooked me when the price started coming up. I became one of Coinbase's earliest clients, and they suddenly became a financial services company, needed lawyers, and that's how I got the job.
Great story, great story. So Coinbase is quite a unicorn. I think everybody knows what the meaning of that term is, but what an example of a unicorn Coinbase is. Market valuation of $8 billion in 7 years, and I understand that there may be some developments that you'd like to mention.
Yeah, well, tons of developments over that period of time. What I'll say is we're in the process. We're a privately held company, so we don't typically disclose financials, although I think today we're actually going to be disclosing some information publicly. One of the reasons we're thinking about doing that is the term unicorn doesn't have quite the cachet it once did. I don't think you have to read too much further than the front page of the Wall Street Journal to hear about some unicorns kind of cratering in valuation in recent weeks. Coinbase has been, I'll give you a couple of examples of why we're excited about being this particular unicorn. Coinbase has been profitable each of the last 3 years. That's an unusual thing for most Silicon Valley companies. In the course of the past 5 or so years, we have generated over $2 billion in transaction fee revenue, most of that in the last 2 years, so our trend is going up. We have generated more operating profit than we have raised in venture capital backing. And so Coinbase's unicorn strategy is not just to try and achieve an eye-popping valuation, although we are pleased and humbled that that's happened. It really is to try and operate as a sustainable financial institution, even as we continue through the private company trajectory of our path. I don't know if and when the company intends to IPO. I think that's a discussion we have internally and with employees and investors. But for the moment, we are committed to operating a kind of a profitable and successful privately held company.
That's terrific. So what employee number were you, and how many employees are there now? And can you tell us about the evolution and what that experience was like over that 7-year period?
Sure. So I mean, there's a woman who used to work at the company in our recruiting team whose name is Aurora. And Aurora and I have a slight debate on who exactly started before the other, and it makes an important difference between employee 9 and 10. And I would claim I'm the 9th employee, and she might debate who started on Thursday versus Friday of that particular week in early 2014. But I'm going to tell you the answer is I'm employee number 9 at Coinbase. Today we have approaching about 1,000 employees. Most of us are based in San Francisco. And the experience, I mean, has just been remarkable. And I think anybody who's either worked at or been involved with, hyper-growth startups can probably relate to this. But as one friendly example here, if you join Coinbase today as an inbound employee, your experience will be something like the follows. You'll start on a Monday. You'll go to a special training room. You'll have a series of people come in, give you presentations about the culture of the company, and you'll get training about being compliance issues, and you'll get training on the systems we use. And there's another day following up where we talk about cybersecurity issues and other things that are important to the company. And then you'll go to your desk, which has all been laid out for you, and there's a welcome kit with a T-shirt and pens, and your manager welcomes you and all that stuff. When I joined the company, I was locked out of the office, could not actually get in. I finally got upstairs, and they said, "Hey, Juan, your computer's not here, so can you just go ahead and purchase one for yourself down the street at the Apple Store," which I then did. "We've lost track of our corporate card, so can you just go ahead and put that on your own card? We'll comp you." Which they then did in Bitcoin at the early peak of a market, and then the price came down, and I was like, what the hell's going on at this place? The experience over the years has been transformative. I think one of the most interesting things about being at a hypergrowth company for that period is just experiencing the surge in employees and the number of people we have around. You go through a series of evolutionary states where a lot of which, in my mind, kind of involve internal communications and how we get work done. And in the early stages, candidly, you don't need to spend that much effort thinking about how do we communicate priorities to people and how do we collaborate with one another, because we're all on the same page. Because there's only 20 people and we do a weekly stand-up and we're all there. One of the most surprising things to me over the years has been the criticality of making sure you go way out of your way with the larger org to kind of understand what the priorities are, set up structure around process and decision making. And that for folks at larger firms, I mean, that probably comes as second nature. But for a growth stage startup, that's been a real interesting journey for us. And I think we've had our fair share of challenges that hopefully we've worked through.
So it's my understanding that you have 30 million clients at the company. Mm-hmm. That's a rather large number. Can you talk to us about what you see happening next at Coinbase with respect to this very large and successful company that you now have? What are some of the things that you're looking at going forward in terms of potential new services and what the related growth issues might be?
Well, I think the short answer is we're going to continue to do what we're doing today, which is to provide a very stable platform, a trusted place to purchase cryptocurrency, and we're going to do it in more places. So today we're operating in the United States, Europe, and slowly in Asia. And I think as we turn on more bank relationships, because the way we get paid from our clients who want to purchase Bitcoin is just via a conventional ACH or wire transfer, SEPA, whatever it may be, credit card. As we turn on more of those bank relationships, we will bring the same set of Coinbase.com consumer services to more places in the world. Of course, that opens up a series of interesting legal questions. This is not predominantly a legal crowd, so I will probably spare you the details of all the regulatory fun stuff that we have to think through in this space. But that's probably the first answer to your question. It's expansion. And I think we're super excited to get to places in the world where you currently don't have a money transfer system that operates at the stability and reliability of the United States or Europe or parts of Asia. In fact, one of our fastest growth markets, a lot of our fastest growth markets are in South America. Venezuela has seen an enormous uptick in adoption of Bitcoin. People are not just purchasing it to effect a transfer and then change back into local currency. They're purchasing it and they're holding onto it as the replacement currency because it is better than the local currency. We are seeing that increasingly in lots of different parts of the world. More than half the world's population has internet access through some form of a smartphone, and that is all you need to bank yourself using this technology. So Coinbase intends to get increasingly involved in our kind of mission of opening the world's financial system, and the first step in that is reaching out to more countries to allow people to access this technology through our website and through other rails we're going to put into place. The other piece of it, which to me is equally exciting, is we're just scratching the surface of all of the decentralized utility functions that are coming online in this space. So if you want to think about where we are in the evolution of this technology, we're in like 1990 of the internet. You may remember in 1990 of the internet, there was a slow-moving dial-up modem. There were kind of clunky chat rooms where weird cliques of people would get together and talk about whatever thing came to mind. But at that point in time, people did not fully realize that in a decade or two, you would have revolutions in social media. And you mentioned My Uber today. That's an internet technology that would not be possible without the internet, right? How we consume all media. We see that evolution happening across financial services and a lot of other verticals with blockchain, and Coinbase is going to be a core part of that, whether it's by making it easy for you to access some of these functions through the Coinbase website, being a place where developers can access our clients through APIs and actually have services that they can sell to our clients, or some other series of functions. We're looking into all of that and excited to grow.
Wow. Great stuff. So one of the other things that is developing out there, I think most people have seen the TV commercial where they have the stockbroker standing in his office and he looks out the window and sees Charles Schwab, and the whole issue of the race to zero on fees is coming up. How do you see this thought process and reasoning around the race to zero potentially impacting financial services companies that operate across the internet?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I mean, you've seen the broker-dealer trade fee model coming down as you say, zero, and I think a lot of other internet companies or broker-dealer advisory companies in Silicon Valley are feeling a lot of pressure to drop fees. And Coinbase is not really quite in that space, but we do have a model that looks a lot like Fidelity and Schwab and others, and at some level we actually are increasingly competing with those firms in this space. I think there probably will be some compression on fees as the ecosystem matures. I think our response to that is, kind of bring it on. We're going to do the same sorts of things that I think Schwab did, which allowed it to get comfortable bringing its retail brokerage fees to zero. And so that includes things like diversifying revenue streams through an asset under management model. One of the major businesses that we have at the company is a custodial business for endowments and hedge funds who need to hold large amounts of crypto. We actually operate a bank out of New York for that purpose, a wholly owned sub of the company. That one business went from $0 worth of crypto under management about 18 months ago to well north of $6 billion today. So you think about that kind of growth for a bank, that is remarkable. that is a more stable sort of revenue source for us. We see lots of other opportunities like that. And so I think, again, as Coinbase and the industry mature, you're going to have to start to see a more diversification of the way we generate income in this space.
So my last question, since we're wanting to stay on time here, is when you think about regulatory issues and risk management issues, what is top of mind for you? It was mentioned earlier, cybersecurity, but we have things like the California Consumer Privacy Act. We have BSA, AML. What are some of the top of mind issues that people in this space might want to be thinking about?
I mean, look, there are a ton of issues. How the securities laws relate to crypto is really a top of mind and a big one. Cybersecurity is a big issue. Data privacy is an issue that we worry a lot about. There's all sorts of Bank Secrecy Act questions around how does, do we think about a Bitcoin transfer as a wire transfer, and do the wire transfer rules apply to that? So there are myriad questions that I think are top of mind for us and that we are working through. If I were to give you a more abstract answer, like what is the thing that I am most concerned about in the regulatory sphere, I think it's probably snap policy judgment. This stuff is still complex. It is new. Most policymakers do not understand what crypto is and how it works and the potential it has. And I think when you mix that newness together with some of the serious financial services, AML, and other issues that kind of intersect our space, it creates almost a perfect storm for bad policy decisions. And so our approach to that is I spend a ton of time in Washington. A number of folks spend a number of time in Washington. Our strategy has been to be very open and embracing of the regulators. I think we've taken that risk from a 10 when I started. I mean, we were really concerned about the government completely shutting down the space when I started at Coinbase. We brought it probably down to a 5. I don't think anybody's going to shut down the space, but there's plenty of opportunity to make bad policy, and that as a meta kind of point is probably the number one concern for us.
Wow, terrific. Well, I think we have run out of time. The sand has run through the glass. And what a terrific opportunity this morning to speak with Juan of Coinbase. And let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Walt.
Thank you.